Hello and welcome back. This tutorial will be on inheritance, which is the next step after you're able to create classes. These would be considered single base classes. Now you're ready to move on to inheritance. If you don't know how to do Hello World, don't know how to create base classes, go back, look at tutorial 4 and the one that goes through the employee, boss, and the driver program. Because you have to get that far at least. So when we're talking about inheritance, we're talking about building a class from another class or an object from another object. I'm going to start out with this example I call inheritance 1. And just so that, actually let me make a quick note here, just so that you know where to find these examples. They are located at bhecker.com. If you, go back to www.bhecker.com and actually let me just click on it here. I was having YouTube up instead. So let's see. If we go to bhecker.com and we go into the Object-Oriented Programming in Java section, which is going to be either, actually right now it's under Spring 2011. In years to come it's going to be located in a different location. But what you're looking for is the object-oriented design in Java. And if you go in here and you do as I've been doing here, in fact, let me just make this a little bit bigger so you can see what I'm clicking on. I started out navigating through ITU classes and clicked on Spring 2011, where the object-oriented design with Java is located. In the future, it will probably end up be down here under independent study classes, but for right now, it's up here. If I go into object-oriented design with Java and click on course materials and navigate down, well, at the top you see a bunch of assignments and some support files for that, some live videos and PowerPoints. Here we go. These are the examples, and so you can see from lecture 1 we have simple examples. I believe I have an inheritance here. This inheritance example number 1 is down here. I will put inheritance example number 2 on here as well. But these are some great sample files that you can navigate to. That are the ones that I'm using in this tutorial, so it'll give you an idea, so you don't have to retype everything. Although you probably would be a good practice actually for you to retype it anyway. But let's talk about inheritance. Okay. So now we have inheritance1.java. This is from that inheritance 1 link I just showed you. We have a class. I've left out the public, private, protected. I've left out which are called the access methods. I've left that out for right now. Instead, I'm giving you a simplified version. It's called class space mybase. Simple mybase class. And we have one data member, or you can call it a field if you want. It's going to be private integer x. And then we have a method which is going to act as a constructor, which is public mybase, and it takes on one parameter, x. And now we kind of see the use of this in an example. I think I've talked about this perhaps in a previous video. But this .x is referring to this x up here. In fact, this is the current class. Super is going to be down here. That's going to refer back to this over here. So when you inherit one class from another, you call super to go back to the base. And I'll explain that in a few more minutes as well. It's just something you're going to have to get used to in terms of the terminology. But this right here, and I've kind of did this a little sloppy. I put it all in one file. But this is right now, this is the base class that I'm trying to give you to start out with. This should probably be in a separate file. You can call it mybase.java is the name of the file. But in this particular class, it's very simple. We are working with the variable x as a data member, and we can use a default constructor, a constructor here to take on x when we create it, and we assign this .x to equal that x, which is what we're taking in from the parameter. And we have getX and showX. So we have some modifiers and accessors. So getX is our method that we're going to return x, and show is something we're just going to show print out. X is equal to x plus. And this is going to concatenate, so it's going to say x is equal to x. Okay, so that's the base class. And now here's the here's the trick, and it's not really a trick. It's really easy, actually. And you can pause the video if you want, type this in. That's another choice that you have as well. So here is our extended class. This is how we do inheritance. This is the inherited class that is using the base class. And the trick to inheritance was right here. It's the keyword extends. So we say class my derived extends my base. There's your inheritance. Everything else about the class is identical. It's just another class. And so in my base, we have x, and this is, kind of a trivial example. In my derived, we're going to introduce a new variable, and we're going to call it y. In my derived, we actually have x and y, because we get everything, every time we create a new instance of my derived, we're also creating my base. So every my derived is also an object of my base. So we inherit, we take everything from the past, we bring it forward, and then we add to it. And we have the option to override or to overload methods. If we override them, we replace them completely. If we overload them, we add to it. We take the functionality, and we add more functionality to it. So let's go back to the inheritance concept here. So we have my derived extends my base, and now we have private integer y, and now we have a constructor my derived, which takes on a parameter x, and we have super x. So we're actually calling super. We don't use this because this would be in the current class that we're talking about. This is always talking about us. Super is talking about the base. So super takes us back a level to where we extended from, and now we want to say super x, meaning we're referring back to the base class. And we'll see super used in a lot of different examples. Basically, it's just every time you see super, just think you're going back to the base. You're calling the bases constructor, the set.x. So we have my derived integer x and y, and what was another constructor? For those of you who are just getting familiar with the concept, we've got two constructors here. This one takes super x, and then it adds y to it. So the interesting thing is what we're going to see in this example is that all of these constructors from x, for x and also for y, fire off automatically. So when you derive a class from another class, all of the constructors, the default constructor will fire. So in here we have my derived xy. We're going to set both, and then we have another method here to say integer get y, return the y, and then show. And then show is going to say, and the show method of my derived is going to show x and it's going to show y. And it's going to use the get x method that was in the base class. So we can basically assume that we're going to get all of the data members and all of the member functions of the previous class that we inherited from, and we're going to use them in this class. Which is why we inherit, because we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to take advantage of what already exists. So now if we go back down at the bottom here, this is really our driver program. And again, this probably belonged in a separate file. This class belonged in a separate file called myderived.java. This one would be inheritance1.java, which is basically the file that you downloaded. Okay, so public class inheritance1, what is this going to do? It's just going to basically take and create my base b, which is equal to new base 2, setting x to 2, and then we're going to go b.show my derived d is equal to my derived 3, 4 to set x and y, and then we're going to go d.show to basically exercise the method. So let's take a quick look here. I'm going to compile it first, make it bigger so you can see it. Let's see. So Java, there's my typing again. Java C inheritance. Let's see if I can spell inheritance. 1.java. Perfect. So far so good. Yep, no typos. That's good. And I'm going to say Java inheritance 1. A little more practice again on how to run. Oops. Let's see. Well, what do we have in here? Inheritance 1, no class found. Oh, probably because I misspelled it. I did, of course. So let's see. Let's just do a little check here so I can type It is called inheritance1. Okay, so Java space inheritance1. And let's make this a little bigger. Oops. There it is. So here's what I typed in. I press return. I see x is equal to 2, y is equal to 3, excuse me, x is equal to 3, x is equal to 4. This is the, going back to here, what I did to create this output was basically do a b.show and a d.show. And it gave me basically all of the functionality. And then I also ran the, up here, where I've created a new instance of my base b equals new base 2, so I've passed it to, I did b.show, and then I did my derived d is equal to new derived 3, 4, d.show, and then d.show basically gave me the x and the y as 3 and 4. So you can kind of see how we are able to, and this kind of demonstrates the concept of inheritance, so that you can see basically how we're not redefining anything, we're just adding to it. And so as a general rule, when you inherit one class from another, you use the keyword extends, a little bit of review here, and you add, you don't replace. So if my base had x in it, we leave x alone and we added y to it, essentially. So when you start inheriting, it's very common for new students to start reinventing everything, to also put x in the my derived class when it doesn't belong. We already have x. So if we already have it from the base, don't redefine it, just use it. In fact, this applies towards the variables, also the methods, is what we've seen down here when I did the the get x, which was part of the base. I called that actually in the derived. Actually, I called it in the driver program. Here's the get x up here, which is part of my base. But every object that is created in terms of this object here, my derived, is also a base. So if you just keep keep in mind that every object is itself and everything that came before it as well, and that might actually help you. So I hope you found this example interesting. Again, it was inheritance1, and I have another example called inheritance2, lo and behold. So inheritance2 is actually kind of interesting as well. This one kind of shows you about the constructors and how each one of the constructors will fire. So, okay, we have a class called purple, and here is our class purple. And again, I put it all in one file. The next one I show you will be separated out into two separate files. So we have class purple, and I'm making this a little bigger for you guys at home here. Class purple, and we have protected integer I is equal to 0. What does protected mean? That's an interesting access method. That means it is private to the public, but public to derived classes. So when we start deriving one class from another one and we start using inheritance, then we can start actually using protected, because what we're trying to do here is we want the inherited class to be able to modify integer I. If we said private, it's not going to be able to touch it, because private is private to inherited classes as well as to the main driver. If we say public, then it's going to be modified by everyone. But we don't want the public. We don't want the main driver program to be able to modify this variable. We want to use the methods to modify the variable. So we call it protected. And protected makes it private, again, private to the driver program or to the public, but public to classes that are inheriting from it. Okay, so we have a default constructor here, purple. And what this does is it says purple is running and I is equal to I. Okay, so I is equal to 0, looks like. And then we have public purple, and then take on a parameter I, so we can set the I using the constructor when we make the instance of the particular variable. And here we go, this dot I is equal to I, so we know about this already, and we're talking about purples, this I. And so we're going to print out, when we run this one, we're going to print out purple I is running and I is equal to I. Well, same thing as we saw before. Okay, now we have another class called a violet, and violet extends purple. So now we know we're using inheritance. And we could put this in a separate file, call it violet.java, and it would accomplish the same thing. It would probably be more proper. So violet actually is kind of the same as purple. We're just changing the name to violet, really. And we have a main constructor, default constructor here that says violet I running, and I is equal to I. Same thing as before. And then we have violet. We've added another constructor to set I as a parameter, and we're running that. So in the instance, in the inheritance2, the driver program is right here, and it's kind of simple. That's why I put it all into one program, one file, I should say. And what we've got is here, we're going to create a new violet, and we're creating a new violet, and we're setting the for. So we're not touching the base at all. Rather, we're creating two new instances of objects, and we're not even giving them a name. Because normally, if you haven't noticed, this syntax is a little like, new violet. Well, new violet is actually going to create a new instance of the violet. Normally, we would assign this to a value, like violet, my violet is equal to new violet, which would basically create a new instance and assign it to the variable so we can keep track of it. So this is what you might want to call sloppy. I don't know. I'm not going to use it for anything. So why do I need to assign it to a variable? I'll just create some new instances. You can do this to test stuff, which is why I'm kind of showing it to you. Like when you don't want to write a huge driver program, but you want to see the objects, you want to see what gets created, so you can exercise all the methods real easily by just going new violet, and run each one of the violet methods. So here, okay, so we're going to run it, and let's take a look and see what happens. Let's see if I can compile here. I'm going to go a little bit bigger here. This is inheritance2, so I should be able to easily, there we go, back up and just change the 1 to a 2. So I got Java C inheritance2, I compiled it, and now I'm going to run it. And so hopefully this is the one where I typed it in correctly. Nope. Inheritance, there we go, inheritance2. Now I have purple running, and I is equal to 0, violet running, and I is equal to 0, purple running, and I is equal to 0, violet running. Alright, so what is this telling you? It's actually demonstrating the order in which the constructors fire. Think of it going in reverse order. You're in violet. We created two instances of violet. This is our driver program right here, where we said, remember just from 2 minutes ago, or 2 seconds ago, new violet 4, we created two new instances of violet. We didn't create any purples, but the default constructor for purple, right up here, printed something to the screen, which meant here it fired. And when I said fired, it ran. So we have purple running, and it's the default constructor that's running. And then we have violet I running. Well, we also got the default again when we created violet 4 down at the bottom of the code when we created, because we created two new instances here. On the second one, we also got it running. So it's pretty much predictable behavior. In fact, what is predictable is the fact that all of the constructors are going to fire in the reverse order of the object. So we go back to the beginning, and the beginning is the purple, and that constructor goes, and then we move forward. So if we have like 5 or 6 different classes, let's say, they're all extended from each other, because we go, violet extends purple, maroon extends violet, and grape extends maroon. So we start building like an entire hierarchy going on with extending one class from another, and then we go back and we say, well, what happened here? All of the constructors are going to go off for us as well. So we can override those constructors, and I'll have an entirely different lecture on overriding and overloading to show you how to basically add to the functionality and replace functionality, functionality that you may not necessarily want. And so those are some of the options that you have in terms of this example. So I will leave you with that in terms of inheritance. And I will make this example available. In fact, it's at the bhacker.com website. And so the next tutorial, we need to talk about interfaces as well. But that's pretty much the basis of inheritance. I'll do another video to show you a little bit more complicated inheritance, a little bit more. But that is your first introduction to inheritance. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you practice it. And again, if you're looking for the files, it was Inheritance 1 and Inheritance 2. Thank you.